What is up, squad? It's your lad the Anxious Squid here, and we're back at it with another one in the Storytime playlist for today's video. So strap yourselves in for some Australian history and some fun facts about the bloke I think was Australia's best ever leader, John Curtin. Full disclosure guys, these Storytime videos take me a little longer to make than my other ones. If this is the first time you've seen my channel, I also do reaction videos, videos on current affairs and live streams, the occasional travel vlog or performance poem whenever I travel or write new poetry, and yeah, these Australian history stories. After you're done here, go and watch a couple of my other videos, have a poke around my channel, help me out with as many watch minutes as you can, and maybe click subscribe just down there if you like me. A big thanks also goes out to these guys for supporting me on Patreon so far. The link is in the description, and if you join them, please join them if you're keen and able. There are a bunch of perks for doing so, and I hope to share the growth of my channel with you guys. Let's actually talk about John Curtin now though, shall we? Curtin was Australia's 14th Prime Minister, the Prime Minister during the Second World War, and he would trade barbs on equal footing with the likes of Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. Seeing us through the Japanese attacks in the Northern Territory during the Second World War, and navigating the switch in major allegiances from Britain to America, should be enough to afford Curtin the legacy of one of our best. Sadly though, I don't think he's even a household name in Australia, something I hope to amend. Curtin won office a mere 2 months prior to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, and he literally died in office due to the stresses of the role. Well, he died from heart disease, but the stresses of the role has a better ring to it. Between the war and Curtin's occasional desire for liquor and cigars instead of food, it's safe to say there was never a dull moment in his time serving as leader, let's put it that way. I've spoken before about context being key to understanding the moral fibre of the people I talk about, and Curtin's context was international turmoil. People often ask me who I think Australia's greatest Prime Minister was, and generally speaking, I say they're likely expecting my response to be Gough Whitlam or Bob Hawke based on my political leanings. They're always wrong though, because depending on my mood, I'll answer that question with either John Curtin or Ben Chifley every time. Chifley being the bloke who took over when Curtin died in office and who took it upon himself to complete Curtin's political goals. I know it was, 80 odd years ago, but have a listen to the programs initiated by these two men and try telling me that they didn't lay the foundation for our collective success as a nation. I dare you. Over a period of 4 years, 41 to 45, John Curtin brought about the following. He instigated the Statute of Westminster Adoption Act, which sounds wordy and it isn't obvious on face value, but in a nutshell was the moment Australia officially became a separate nation from Britain. While he did intend for us to remain as subjects of the British Crown and was a believer in the White Australia policy, not becoming a republic and staying well and truly within the Commonwealth, it was important for the war that we be seen as a separate entity from the UK. Curtin was worried Britain would be too focused on the soldiers on their doorstep or on their beaches to worry about anyone in the Southern Hemisphere at all. He'd seen Churchill's treatment of India as a second-class aspect or part of Britain, and he was wary that Churchill viewed Australia in the same vein as he did them. And he was right. It was America that came to our aid when Darwin was bombed by the Japanese, not the UK. It is unlikely they would have done so without Curtin's prior schmoozing of Roosevelt, but I'll admit there's no way of really knowing that for sure. Curtin instigated the pension system nationally. Although there were some state pensions prior, he was the bloke who made it compulsory across the board, and he expanded dramatically upon them. He even took the states to the High Court when they refused to pay the pensions, and he won. He created a pension specifically for deserted wives and widows, which included de facto wives and partners. And he created a maternity pension too, which was paid to women who were pregnant outside of wedlock, and therefore mostly shunned by society at the time. Curtin dramatically expanded upon the unemployment benefits and sickness benefits that were previously only available to landowners. And he removed the restrictions on Aboriginal and Chinese people gaining access to welfare. So say what you like about his thoughts on the White Australia policy, he made it so that no matter what difference your skin colour was, if you'd paid tax in Australia, you were eligible for support from the government. He created the Women's Employment Board, which would lead to the empowerment of the nation's women during the war effort. And he would also make it illegal to pay women less than 90% of of a man's wage for doing the same job. And I know 90% for the same job is still a joke, but we're talking 1941 here. He was miles ahead of the game if you take a second to think on it. When Chifley took over, some Curtin policies that he instigated were things like the Snowy Mountain hydroelectric scheme and all of the immigration policies inherent within. For anyone who hasn't heard of that, I suggest a quick Google. It's one of Australia's greatest stories, and it's the reason we're now a nation of immigrants as opposed to a nation of British loyalists. I'll say it again, the Snowy Mountain hydroelectric scheme. I might even do a video on it in the future, but for now, for my American viewers, it's fairly similar to what Tesla tried to do in Niagara Falls, except they succeeded. Chifley also brought in Curtin's plans for the construction of Australian National University, which is still a thing down in Canberra, ASIO, and the building of over 200,000 houses for social welfare recipients over a span of 4 years. It's safe to say they were staunch democratic socialists. Curtin had even been a member of the Victorian Socialist Party and written extensively for them in his youth as a journalist. It's hard to choose which Prime Minister had a more broad, sweeping effect on Australian life 80 years on. But, I don't know, I think you should at least know who to thank for the welfare safety net that we all enjoy or have that peace of mind of today. The only Prime Minister in recent times that I feel like I could compare with them, or who I think had the same zeal for the greater good in mind, is Julia Gillard. Say what you like about her government and how they came to power, but they'll be talking about her and her NDIS in 100, 200, 300 years if nations survive that long. That's the National Disability Insurance Scheme for the uninitiated. It was intended to be a lot like Medicare for all, but for equipment by people with disabilities, required by people with disabilities. Stuff like wheelchairs, breathing assistant machine thingies, support workers when and where they need them, you know what I mean. It's definitely safe to say no one has done as much in so little time as John Curtin did, though. And he did it with World War II happening all around him. So I think it was a little more momentous than, the chaos around Gillard, which was mostly of her own doing. That's it for this video though, guys. I hope you enjoyed learning about John Curtin as much as I enjoyed speaking about him. If you want to see more of these storytime videos at a more consistent rate, feel free to join these guys by throwing me a couple of bucks a month on Patreon. Failing that, have a poke around my channel, hit up my other playlists, hit subscribe, and comment who you want me to talk about next, or follow me on my other socials as well. And yeah, I'll see you when I look at you. Thanks for watching, guys.